Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the Brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge and are solely the viewpoints of the participants.
Welcome back, brothers, to the Fort Worth 148 podcast. My name is Billy Hamilton. I am the current senior warden of Fort Worth 148.
I am Ebby Kirkendall, and I'm the master of ceremonies for Fort Worth 148. And we'd like to introduce an extra special guest to our podcast today. The most honorable Shaun Bradshaw from the Most Worshipful Grand Lodge of North Carolina is joining us today. How are you, sir?
Doing very well. Thank you. It's good to be with you guys today.
All right. So today it's just Ebby and I. Unfortunately, Ritt Moore is part of a wedding party in Las Vegas. And so I'm sure he's having a good time out there. And Gabriel has family obligations. He was unable to attend today. But we are very excited to be able to make it on the calendar for Most Worshipful Brother Shaun. And thank you for being with us today.
Again, I'm thrilled to be with you guys and looking forward to the discussion.
All right, so we do have a couple of discussion questions that we usually start off the podcast with. The first one, and this is something that's very near and dear to my heart, is what is the proper etiquette when a prompt is needed during a degree?
You mean aside from 12 other past masters screaming out from the sidelines?
Right. Well, and that seems to happen a lot. And I personally, I think that a lot of times it's because when we go into a degree, we don't necessarily set up ground rules, which is something that I try to do whenever I confer a degree, is I let everyone know at the very beginning, here are some rules for this degree. First, turn off your phones or put them on silent. Secondly, there's one single prompter, and it's designated this brother here. So anyone else who speaks out of turn is, in a way, kind of breaking the decorum of the degree.
That has always been my rule as well during degree work. And the if I ever need help, there's usually a little sign that I have for the prompter, and I always ask the prompter to be relatively close to me or within view so that they can see when I'm asking for a word, because as I'm sure you guys do, ritual has to have a certain amount of emotion and cadence to it for it to have depth to the candidate, and so dramatic pauses or pauses for effect and meaning sometimes could be misconstrued by some as a need for a prompt, when in fact it's just I want the guy to really pay attention to this word or this next phrase I'm about to say.
Right. Yeah, and that's a great point. I think that the gravitas of the situation that you're trying to impart really should take priority over the perfection of the ritual, right? I mean, perfect ritual is always good, but what we're trying to impart here is this sense of solemnity and seriousness that we take our craft. We're trying to impart that to the candidate.
Mm-hmm.
So what should a prompter look for, do you think, to discern the difference between a dramatic pause in the need of the person to actually receive a prompt?
Well, for me personally, I will look at the prompter. Typically, when I'm delivering ritual, I am looking at the candidate, unless there's some other reason or some other thing I should be looking at. For example, a symbol. But if I look at the prompter, they've been told that's sort of the prompt that I need a word.
I think that's actually a great, a great way to indicate that, having some sort of pre-designed indication to the prompter, and combined with Billy's usual statement before any degree, it really takes guesswork and ensures that there's as minimal interruptions to the rhythm and the heartbeat of that particular ritual.
That brings up a good point. That rhythm to the ritual. Each ritualist, I think, has a certain rhythm they work within, and you guys probably do the same thing. You may, on occasion, want to step it up a beat and a half, or take it down a little bit, depending on the particular context of that ritual, or something that maybe you sense from the candidate. Like sometimes I'm looking at the candidate and I'm trying to feed off the energy that they're giving me. So the more I feel that they're in tune with me, I will try to adjust so that there's a sense of balance, if you will, because I want them to understand not just the words that I'm saying, but get the sense, the emotion, if you will, of what I'm saying to them.
Yeah, I think when you have a good balance, um, I know there's been several degrees where afterwards, you feel energized, right? That even though you
Hmm.
were trying to impart this light to the candidate, you receive some in return, right? When you have a good degree afterwards, and you have a good connection with the brothers who perform it.
Most definitely.
Brother Sean, if you wouldn't mind moving into a little bit about yourself, would you mind telling us uh, more about, Shaun Bradshaw outside of the Masonic lens?
Sure. Is this like a dating game? Do I need to give you my sign and all that good stuff? Or...
Right.
Long walks on the beach and pina coladas.
Yeah,
Right.
that's right. That's right. Well, I'm pretty fond of Clase Azul Reposado tequila, but that's probably not the kind of answer you're looking for.
No, but it's
I'm
something we
also
will know.
um, yeah, at a personal level, just in my professional life, as we often do when we think about how we answer a question about who we are, we have a tendency to start with the ego side. So I'll start, I won't be any different. I'll start with that. In my professional life, I am the owner of a consulting firm that specializes in helping companies improve their software development process. We generally do agile type consulting and testing of software, automation, DevOps, those types of things. So a little bit in the IT, but uh, personally, I serve as the financial guy for the company and one of the consultants. So I tend to work more with people directly in behavior and how teams work together, and a little bit less directly with the technology itself. But
Mhm.
that's sort of on the professional side. On the family side, I've been married for 25 plus years now. I'd have to do the math, which I'm not going to do. I have a 24-year-old son, a 22-year-old daughter, and I live in Greensboro, North Carolina, as you could probably tell from my accent. And uh, I have a lot of things that I enjoy doing that have been put on hold because now I'm serving as the Grand Master of North Carolina.
Uh, so when did you join, and how old were you?
I joined in 1997. That would have made me 26 years old.
Okay. What inspired you to join? Did you have family that were Masons previously, or was there something that caught your attention and brought you to the fraternity?
Sure. There's a very long story, but in the interest of time, I'll just sort of give you the brief overview of it. I grew up without a father in the home. My mother and my grandmother raised me. I think they did a fantastic job, but I did not have that male role model as a constant basis. I did martial arts, so I had my karate instructor who I looked to as sort of modeling male behavior. And
Mhm.
there came a time, of course, after I got married, when my son was born, and I realized that, you know, as good a job as my mother and grandmother did, I believe as parents, they couldn't show me how to be a father. And our fraternity, our craft, had made itself known to me throughout the years. I had, bumped into the craft, if you will, seen books, heard songs, read articles, met people, and this was, of course, the internet was around, so I did a little bit of searching and found out you had to ask one to be one, and ended up asking my college roommate's father, whom we were together at lunch one day, and I noticed his ring, and that's kind of what got me into it. So the short answer is it was a family member, and it was my son that
Mhm.
inspired me to join.
Wow. That's interesting because usually so many times you hear it the other way around.
No, a little different, but as I go around the state speaking to the brethren and sharing part of my story, what I try to show them is that the inspiration can come in any shape or form. It's not just that you have to have known someone beforehand. It's really about what's in your heart and the
Mhm.
desire to change and be a better person. The transformative experience of our rituals is something I feel very strongly about, and I think my experience and from what I've been told by my wife and my children that I made the right decision.
That's fantastic, especially that they support you in that. Um,
Hmm.
one of the things that when we talk to a new brother, one of the things that we make sure to do in our lodge is if they're married or have a girlfriend or fiance, we always make sure that they're part of the visitation when we go to the brother's home and talk to them uh, before we vote on their petition, because we know that if the family is not supportive, then more than likely, no matter how well intentioned the potential candidate is, they're not going to be in it for long because
Hmm.
without that family background and support, it becomes a conflict. And between family and masonry, family hands down wins out every single time, as it should. Um,
And it should, yes, yes.
okay. So, what lodge did you join when you first got interested in masonry? How did you choose the lodge that you were going to petition?
Well, I didn't think really to choose a lodge as much as when I asked Brother Ted Wright about becoming a Mason. He was a member of Stokesdale Lodge number 428. As I mentioned earlier, I live in Greensboro, North Carolina. Stokesdale is a rural town about 20 miles north of Greensboro, and I did have a choice. I could have joined one of the quote unquote city lodges that are here in Greensboro, or I could go to Stokesdale. And actually, it turned out from my house, just based on where I happened to live at the time, it would take me 25 minutes to get to Stokesdale, and with traffic, it took me 20 minutes to get downtown Greensboro. So it didn't seem like that much more of a burden to go out to Stokesdale. So that's where I joined, and I'm very glad I did. It's been a wonderful lodge to be a part of.
All right, that's fantastic. Yeah, and that is interesting because a lot of times, especially if you live like in the suburbs, you do have a choice of there's a lot of lodges that are in outside of the cities, and they take just as long, and a lot of times even shorter than those that are downtown.
Hmm.
So what
If I
off?
might ask a quick
Yeah,
question, Billy, before you move on,
sure.
I'm kind of curious because I'm part of our lodge's new candidate introduction committee, kind of getting to know people for the first time and expectations. I'm kind of wondering what was the experience that you went through when you first asked someone and then went to the lodge and said, "Hey, I want to be a Mason." How was that What was that process like, kind of getting you prepared for initiation and getting to know the brethren before you were given a petition?
That's a great question. In North Carolina, we have a program called it's the LSME. It's the Lodge System of Masonic Education, and not every lodge uses it, but at the time, at least, Stokesdale did, and it prescribes certain questions and meetings that a candidate should have, uh, either just prior to petitioning or right after petitioning a lodge. And several of the brethren sort of took turns going through that process with me. Of course, I knew Ted, my college roommate's father. I'd known him for several years, and I got to know the other brethren by going to a few lodge events beforehand. If I can tell one quick story,
Mhm.
this is kind of the a cautionary tale, if you will. Not knowing anything about the fraternity other than, of course, the some of the crap you read on the internet. Uh, when I first went to Stokesdale, which, as I mentioned, is in a rural community, I noticed a shed, kind of a shed area in the back. And when I pulled in, I kind of looked back behind the building to see and make sure there weren't any goats back there, because I had read these things about goats. And and frankly, I just didn't want to be involved in anything with a goat. So when I didn't see any goats, I felt very welcome to go on inside and continue the process. Um, but it's something we can joke about it, but it's one of those things where sometimes we have to be a little careful, about the things we joke about.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I remember my son recently joined, and and went through all the degrees. He's actually receiving. He's going to York right and receiving his Smart Master degree Tuesday. Um, but when he joined, some of the other brothers would go around and they would make the jokes about, oh, you're going to ride the goat, and on some level it's like, yeah, it's kind of funny, and then on another level it's like, man, that sounds terrible. And how many people, you know, does it inadvertently color their opinion of our craft, when we make comments like that?
Right. Well, I can tell you, a couple of years ago, my son asked to join the fraternity, and of course, he's a millennial, so he did it by text.
Okay.
And and after we talked in face to face, because I really wanted to understand why he wanted to join.
Hmm.
Uh, he knows uh, not everything that I do in the fraternity, certainly, but he's had a sense growing up of my activities in the fraternity. So he knew there wasn't going to be anything like that. But he told me, and I'm sure Billy, your son was the same. He looked at the guys I was with, I hung out with, the guys that he grew up with, who are my friends and brothers, and he saw, like I was looking for, good role models of
Hmm.
manhood. He saw that, and that's what drove him to ask the question. When I understood that's why he wanted to join, I was totally on board with signing his petition.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I can understand that. I had the same questions for my son when he wanted to petition. I'm like, before we talk about this, tell me why you want to join, and not just because I was a member. He was extremely involved. He still is extremely involved with DMLA. Um,
Hmm.
and he said, well, he's like, after the past couple of years, yeah, I've spent a lot of time with you and the other guys in Masonry, and he's like, I really enjoy, that camaraderie that you have, and it seems like a bunch of really good guys. It's something I want to associate with. So it's not because you're a member, but it's because of the people that I've been exposed to have left me with a positive impression.
It's a wonderful feeling when you know that the organization you belong to is something that talking about inspiration before, inspires your child to want to join also.
Yeah. Moving into masonry and your views of it, what do you see as the biggest strength and weakness of our fraternity, and how do we improve upon it? I and I know you just said about your son with him wanting to join because of the impression that he received. What other strengths do you think there are?
Well, I think there's a few things. I think there's a bit of a renaissance today in kind of bubbling up within the fraternity and returning to our more philosophical roots and really paying more attention to the transformative experience of initiation. And I'm not trying to put down in any way the social activities or the charitable activities that we're a part of. But as I frequently remind our brethren, the principal tenets of a Mason's profession are brotherly love, relief, and truth.
Hmm.
Really, we should be about all three. And so often, lodges today have sort of left the quote unquote truth part, the philosophical part behind, and focused far more on the charitable and social piece. But the fact is, it's there, and I see that as a strength, primarily because uh, young men, and by young, I'm talking, in their 30s and 40s and younger, um, they're looking for what we have. Um, so many men today have these tangential relationships, virtual communities that they've created online, typically through various social media or gaming
Hmm.
communities that they belong to. Uh, but there's a lack of depth in those communities, and our fraternity actually has that depth. And so when we can connect to those men and show them what we have, what's available to them, I see that as a definite strength. Now, the weakness comes in is to where we are today, and our ability to reach those men in a way that they will notice, that they will recognize what we have to offer. Um, our membership is both a strength and weakness in that account too, because we had a significant surge in members, in the late 40s and early 50s that swelled the rolls, but it in many ways diminished sort of the culture of what we were at the time.
Hmm.
I don't think anyone recognized it or thought that it was necessarily a bad thing. But any organization that grows, double and triple in size, like a lot of lodges did at the time, they lose the essence of what they are. And now we're living the back end of that bubble that has burst. But again, I see, I'm an eternal optimist, and I see the positive there is this gives us the opportunity to sort of reinvigorate what at least I believe is an essential part of our fraternity, which is as we've gotten smaller, our ability for those of us who are more focused on that transformative experience, our ability to be heard is much easier now, and we people actually pay attention to us.
Hmm.
Well, it sounds to me like you're not in the camp that is in the gloom and doom membership camp. It sounds like you have a pretty optimistic view of what the fraternity has moving forward, and what the millennial and then the post millennial Zoomers are going to be coming up in what they're going to be doing to our fraternity.
You're exactly right. In fact, I was a couple of years ago at the Northeast Conference of Grand Masters, and there was a lot of discussion about the need to increase membership. And I won't call it the jurisdictions that were sort of pushing their programs to increase membership. And I stood up at one point and I addressed the brethren and I said, "Look, guys, if why do you want members? Because I really get the sense that it's not members you want; it's money."
Hmm.
That you see your lodges struggling, and I get that. Your Grand Lodge struggles with per capita, but there was a time when men paid to join this fraternity. They paid very well to join the fraternity because they saw in it something that inspired them, and rushing to the lowest common denominator is not where we need to go. We need to embrace our size as it is and look to improve the experience. And as Grand Lodge officers, that's what we are here for, is to work with the lodges so that that can happen. And if we continue to push for members, I said, I'm not telling you to do this, but if all you really want is members, just let women in, because then, your pool of candidates just doubled.
Mhm.
I was told later I was the feisty one.
Well, no, it's a good comment, right? And I am totally on board with that. Membership shouldn't be the drive. It should be an indicator. If you're doing things right and you're providing a value, the membership will follow. But if downsizing is what the craft needs in order to get more engaged members, I think we shouldn't look at it as a death knell like so many in our craft seem to do. It's kind of a right sizing, but as you said, we have an opportunity to come back as a more distilled version of what I guess what we've been doing over the past couple of decades and come back, I guess, find our roots again.
You used a really good word, and that's value. I think, unfortunately, uh, our leadership, and I realize I am in a leadership role now, so I'm speaking of, you know, my predecessors. Um, the leadership has gotten so caught up in the number of members that they think that's the good metric. Like, unless you have a lot of members, there is less value in the fraternity, and that's not the case. The number of members we have is a very bad metric of the value that we bring. I would look to, you know, what are the lodges doing in the communities? And does it take 200 members in a lodge or 300 to do more work than a lodge of 50 members can do? I don't think so, because our attendance and activities prove that we don't have that type of work happening. Are we touching people's lives? Are we giving them that transformative experience? Are they able to see themselves improving as being members of the fraternity? And then are we touching other people's lives through our charities, for example, in an outward show of our change and our gift to be able to give of ourselves? That's what creates the true value. It's a harder metric to measure, to count, but as I tell the guys here in North Carolina, we're more than a number at the bottom of a roster.
That's a great point.
And that's something we actually during our new candidate experiences we have once a month. That's actually one of the things that we try to emphasize, at least in our lodge. I can't speak to every lodge across Texas, but I know that one of the things that we tell them, potential new members, is we would much rather have you as an engaged, active member getting value out of our fraternity than your money.
Mm-hmm.
We don't care about. I mean, obviously there is a part of the financing, our organization, but that's not what drives us to be an outward facing organization. Our doors face the street at our temple, and so I think that's a really great reminder that we are an outward facing organization. We have to be inward in our considerations and our growth, but outward in the way we face the world.
Yeah, I love that. I hope you don't mind if I steal that from my next talk.
Feel free.
So, Brother Shaun, can you give us an example? And you've had a couple already, but what is probably the most concrete example that you can point to of how the fraternity has personally made you into a better man?
That's such a difficult question, because the change that happens is so gradual. But I look at it this way: every morning, when I go to the bathroom and I look in the mirror and I'm brushing my teeth, I notice every new wrinkle, every gray hair, this, the bump here or there, whatever. I notice a lot more of my own flaws, internal and external, than anyone else ever will. And so I think the real example of me becoming a better man is the fact that my wife and children encourage me to do this work with the fraternity. If they did not see my work with the fraternity as being something positive, or me being more positive as a result of it, I don't think they would encourage it as much. So I it's hard for me to reflect on myself. Um, so I think having others reflect for me sort of is the better proof, if you will.
I think that actually brings up a really powerful point as it relates to some of the philosophical underpinnings of our organization, because we often talk about how this fraternity that we all are a part of and love brings light to our lives. And that there's an interesting dynamic there whereby light is a really great thing, but on the other side of that coin is the fact that it exposes the things that we don't necessarily like about ourselves, that we want to change, and that even when you're in the light, it shows us the way, but it also shows us our personal flaws and how far we have to travel in order to fix those flaws or to change them.
I'm not sure about Texas ritual. I can't. I actually spent 6 months in Grapevine several years ago, so I did attend a few lodges, but I don't recall seeing a third degree. But in North Carolina, there's a part in the second section of the third degree where we tell the candidate that he will have a dark and difficult path to travel, perhaps more dark and difficult than any he has yet pursued. And a lot of guys tend to equate that comment to the actions that take place following in the ritual, but I interpret it esoterically to mean that you kind of have to get into your own shadow issues, and we all have them. I mean, that's part of the process of growing and changing and becoming better. And I will always know more again about the negative thoughts or the bad things, or however you want to put it, in my own mind. The key is, do I control them? And the fraternity has definitely helped me in that way. And again, I think the reflection of what my family sees, what my friends see, means that, despite sometimes wanting to do things that I shouldn't do, the fact that I don't do them is actually a positive step.
And I've never actually thought of that part in that way before, because yeah, I've always applied it to what happens. And for us, the verbiage is a little bit different, but it has a similar context. But it's true, right? Because in a way, that's from that point, it's the beginning of your journey forward, and there will be rough and rugged, dark times.
Hmm.
And how you deal with them, I think, speaks to your development as a man and a Mason.
I have to say, I did a little bit of Facebook stalking and internet stalking of you, brother, and I read your Grandmaster's message on the Grand Lodge of North Carolina website, and you mentioned earlier a few moments ago about how you viewed that esoterically, and obviously for those brothers out there who haven't been to read the Grandmaster's message from North Carolina, I'll just spoiler alert it for you. You really put a strong emphasis in that message on what you view as your role as an esoteric Mason. Could you give us a little bit of insight into that? Because I thought I was fascinated by it, and I think Billy was too. We had a little bit of a conversation earlier today about that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, when I was elected, the newly elected grandmasters given an opportunity to introduce themselves to the brethren at annual communication, and the first words out of my mouth are, the one thing you need to know about me is I am a proud Masonic esotericist, and I firmly believe that our rituals and our symbols hold a depth that lodges frequently don't get to, but they are there, and the intent is for us to use them to improve ourselves. Uh, and so I am very much steeped in the esoteric. I believe that that is a fundamental aspect of our fraternity. Again, going to the principal tenets, where truth is not simply fact or fiction, but it is the truth of all truths. And I'll say one other thing. When we, again, in North Carolina Ritual, we ask the question, I think it's 12 plus times, who comes here? And how you answer that question is really intended to make you think about who you are inside, not as I introduced myself earlier, from a professional or family standpoint, but who is Shaun really on the inside? And I think that's an important, extremely important aspect of the fraternity that we need to bring focus back to, because it is an essential part of the fraternity, and I think it's also a part of the fraternity that uh, men today are looking for. That is they don't necessarily know that our fraternity has that about itself, but it's something that they're looking for. They're searching for a way to connect with themselves and with other men. Uh, and so, yeah, I love it. I love contemplating the symbolism and the rituals and making connections internally, because I think that allows me to focus on those areas where I know I need improvement.
Fantastic. It's really encouraging too to hear someone be open about um, having an esoteric focus, because I know there's a lot of lodges and even some entire jurisdictions where it seems like the esoteric nature of masonry is kind of glossed over, or in some ways somewhat kind of discouraged, right? That yeah, I know
Hmm.
every year at our grand lodge we have, the past 3 years I think that I've been there, we've had a resolution where someone has stood up and said, if I disagree with educational material, I want the ability to either have, suspend that person from talking and have someone else approve it. um, which in a way says that they're just not. um, I feel like it may talk that some people are uncomfortable talking about esoteric subjects in lodge, because for some lodges it is very much a focus on the social and philanthropic
Hmm.
efforts, but there is that esoteric undercurrent that's always been there that I think some people get a little nervous talking about.
As I travel around the state, and I have an occasion to speak frequently at lodges, of course, and one of the messages I try to bring to the guys is there is this perspective that esoteric is somehow scary, and I try to alleviate that fear by letting them know that esoteric does not mean occult. Esoteric simply means hidden, and the fact that each of my brethren have been initiated through the same ritualistic experience, that simply opens them up to be able to contemplate those symbols and rituals at that deeper level. And so, like I mentioned earlier, with the dark and difficult path, as you begin to contemplate these things, you begin to see connections or things within the ritual that speak to you very directly. And the hope is that through that contemplation, through that understanding, you make real changes in your life that others will then recognize. And that's what esoteric really is. It's about changing who you are through understanding. It's the philanthropic aspect of what we do, the social aspect of what we do, is an important outward manifestation of what happens internally.
Mm.
But we all know that a lot of people can go around and write a check for a charity, and it's done through ego. it's not done out of curitas, a love for all. It's done because they want to prove to people that they can do it.
Mhm.
And I would argue that that's it's benevolent of them, but it's not really changing who they are. And I think that's part of what our fraternity really is about, is changing who you are.
That, yeah, that's a very good point. I hate to put you on the spot like this, but I was wondering if a brother out there who was interested in learning more about what esotericism is in a Masonic lens, is there a resource or a book that you would recommend to someone who wanted to know more?
Definitely. My personal favorite is Kirk McNulty's The Way of the Craftsman. And there's a lot of books that I thoroughly enjoy: Pike's Esoterica, Wilmshurst, Steinmetz. Um, but McNulty, he's fairly contemporary. He's actually still alive. I understand his health is not uh, very good right now, but he writes with a more uh, common language that we're accustomed to today, and his examples are a little more modern. And so that book in particular, I think, gives a very good explanation of sort of the Renaissance way of thinking, and from a philosophical point of view, what our rituals are intended to do.
Mhm.
I would add Chuck Dunning's Contemplative Masonry book as a really good tool, uh, chock full of fantastic exercises that can be utilized individually to experience the depth of the symbols. But I always go to McNulty first when people ask me what I'd recommend.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely have to look into that. I haven't actually come across that book yet. Brother Chuck is, I mean, we've had him on the podcast before. He's been a regular um, companion that we discuss topics with, but
Hmm.
and he has some fantastic insight. Yesterday, we actually, I got to hear him give a presentation on the alchemical symbolism used in the 18th degree of Scottish Rite. That was just fantastic and mind blowing. Okay, so actually going into, well, we do have a couple of subject questions for you. The first one
Sure,
is about your service as Grandmaster. Um,
sure,
so I was wondering, let's go ahead and talk about in Texas, right? We usually serve a 3 year as wardens and deputy grandmaster before becoming grandmaster. So it's I guess kind of a 4 year line. How is the system in North Carolina?
In North Carolina, it is an 8-year line with the ninth year serving as Grandmaster. We are appointed, the Deputy Grandmaster appoints the incoming junior Grand Steward, uh, who then presumably, and it does not always happen, but presumably would be appointed up the line through Senior Steward, Grand Marshal, I'm sorry, Junior Grand Deacon, Senior Grand Deacon, and then from that point on, each of the wardens and deputy grandmaster and grandmaster, they are elected positions, but we do not allow nominations from the floor,
Mhm.
nor do we allow any sort of electioneering. So it's fairly uncommon for someone not to be elected. It has happened in the recent past. By recent, I mean in the last 20 years or so. Um, but uh, so for all intents and purposes, you start, at the bottom, and you just kind of work your way up. And frankly, it takes 8 years to, I think, really understand all the aspects of the administrative and charitable pieces that go on at Grand Lodge. I think it would be very difficult. I do know other grand jurisdictions uh, operate similar to how you've described it in Texas. I know some they serve 2 or 3 years, and then all of a sudden they're Grand Master, and I'm thinking, how do you even know how everything works in just 2 or 3 years? I mean, gosh, it's like drinking from a fire hose. I actually had 7 years, and then I'm now serving in my eighth because we had our senior grand warden a few years ago decided to not be elected. He chose not to continue in the Grand Line. He had other opportunities that he felt were greater calling. So
Mhm.
um, I got shorted 1 year, but uh, I've done the best I could. But gosh, I think I needed I needed all that time I could to kind of learn how everything works.
Well, yeah. So and you know what, I guess that's true. So in a way, you have an opportunity to. It sounds like with the system you have in North Carolina, you have more of an opportunity to really get a firm grasp and understanding of the statewide running of the Masonic institution.
I think that's the case, yeah. And in North Carolina, we have three charities. One is the North Carolina Masonic Foundation, which is an overarching charity that just kind of uh, provides assistance to our primary charities, which are Home for Children in Oxford and our retirement community here in Greensboro. And that those are the brick and mortar charities, if you will.
Mhm.
And the Grandmaster at one time actually served as the chairman his year of all three of those charities. And I absolutely don't understand how any one person could do that, or how you could have continuity from 1 year to the next with a new chairman.
Right.
Luckily, we do not do it that way anymore. Um, and I am personally happy because that is a huge amount of responsibility
Right. It
to
seems
have to
like
oversee those boards.
it seems like it would be an enormous amount of work for one person to keep on top of.
It would be to do it well. To do it well,
Hmm.
yes.
So, were there any mentors in particular that helped you on your way as you progressed through the Grand Line, or even leading up to when you were appointed to it?
Yeah, I'll mention two in particular. There were several, and I hate not to mention everybody, but in the interest of time, I'll mention most worshipful brother Bill Simpson, who was a member of my lodge and who had served as Grandmaster. His tenure as Grandmaster ended, I think, just a few months before I actually petitioned. But he was such a wonderful mentor because one of the things I always noticed about most worshipful brother Bill was in lodge, everyone kind of came to him looking for answers, and he always deferred. He never saw it. Once he was out of his year as Grand Master, I mean, he was there to help, and he was happy to answer questions when he asked, but he never tried to assert any authority simply because he was a past Grand Master, and that taught me, what humility really is. That this guy who he had also served as Grand Commander of the Grand Commandery in North Carolina. He had past worthy Grand Patron of the Order of the Eastern Star in North Carolina. I mean, he was very high up in the Scottish Rite in Greensboro. He served as our secretary. Um, this is a man who was well respected, who had he wanted to, had the ego for it, could have held a grasp on everything, but no, he was a true servant leader, and so he was the first mentor. And then the second one actually is our most immediate past grandmaster, Max Sigmund. Mac and I got to be very close through our years in the Grand Line. Mac always kind of joked that he could remember my birthday because that was the year he and his wife got married. And in some ways, again, I mentioned that I didn't grow up with a father. Mac's son lives in Malaysia and is just a few years younger than me. And in some ways, he and I sort of adopted each other through our Grand Line experience as father and son. So he served as a very close mentor, and made sure I was kept informed on the things that I needed to know about, and truly a wise man, and I loved him, and I loved Brother Bill just immensely. And so thankful to have had those guys as mentors.
Yeah, looking back at it is, you know, especially having a past grandmaster in your lodge that you when you joined. Do you think that it kind of shaped your Masonic journey by having his presence there and his guidance?
I, well, I would have to say yes. I think I think there was a certain, you know, since Brother Bill was a member of my lodge, and he recognized in me certain things that he thought, uh, you know, had some leadership potential that probably allowed me to be seen by others. But you know, I there were other men in my lodge that you know I hold in very high esteem.
Hmm.
Brother Clyde Howerton, who was he was sort of he was the ritual guy in lodge, and I think every lodge needs someone like Clyde Howerton. He's the one that would, you know, even though he didn't serve in an office anymore, he came to every practice to make sure that the new officers had uh, consistent guidance in, you know, the floor work, the words, you know, how and when to practice, and all that kind of stuff. He was a wonderful mentor. Ray Comer, who was our uh, longtime secretary of the lodge, you know, the ability to stay engaged at that level. I think he served 30 plus years in the administrative level of the lodge. Certainly gave me some insights, but I, I think in terms of my ultimately being selected as a person to be in the Grand Line, uh, Bill Simpson probably did have something to do with that, just in that, you know, people recognized him, and so they ultimately came to be able to see me.
So, as you advanced through the grand line, what kind of duties were expected of you as you progressed through?
Every Grand Line member in North Carolina is expected to attend, for example, the board meetings of our different charities, and be involved in various committees. But the those are mostly just to sort of observe. There's no hard requirement until you're in an elected position. Once you're elected as a junior Grand Warden, at that point, you begin to serve officially on some of the boards. Prior to that, there's a couple of committees that you are the ex officio chairman of, which gives you a bit of a sense of some of the responsibilities and having to prepare reports and make sure that different brethren are engaged in different ways, particularly with our charity or some of the other groups. Um, but the real meat of it hits when you become deputy grand master, and that's when hopefully those years of planning that you've put into put down on paper, that's when the actions start to take place. So while we don't have an official uh, calendar for some of those activities, you know, in North Carolina we have 150 plus appointments that we have every deputy grandmaster has to make. So you know, you can't wait until just before any communication to start talking to people to see if they're willing to serve. So you know, you have to give yourself several months, and you know, our past Grand Masters and our Grand Secretary and Grand Lodge office staff are there to help you and give you some assistance there. Um, but in terms of duties, yeah, it's really, again, not it's not overly burdensome until you become an elected member of the Grand Line at the Junior Grand Warden's station.
Okay. Well, and so one of the questions we had was how far out did you begin to plan as Grand Master? But it sounds like we need to modify that to how far out did you begin to plan as Deputy Grand Master and Grand Master?
Yeah, I started shortly after I was appointed. Once the official appointment began, uh, in North Carolina, another thing we do a little bit different than a lot of jurisdictions is our election occurs at our annual communication in September, but we're not installed until December. So there's a few months there where the deputy grandmaster has some time to plan the installation and fill any roles that may still be open or get things lined up that may be a little bit lagging. And but in preparation for all that, if you're going to make 150 appointments, you got to know people. And so, one of the things that every new Grand Line member is told is, start looking for not just the new junior Grand Steward, but look, identify people who can do the work of these different committees. And so it literally started. In fact, I have the notebook still where I started jotting down names, and I wrote the dates down as I was going through. And I think when it was all said and done, I had a list of roughly 400 people that I had looked at over the course of those 7 or so years.
Wow. So actually, and going back into that, so you said you're elected in September, but you're installed in December. Is that
Mhm.
installation related to St. John's Day?
That's a good question. Actually, it would be cool if it was, but no. It's we're installed on the first Saturday in December, and that date was selected because it's the most convenient that doesn't get impacted by a holiday.
Okay.
Um, and what we do is the incoming grandmaster, the deputy grandmaster, selects the location of his installation. So typically, it's in your hometown, wherever you live, because you want your friends and family and your lodge brethren to be able to come to that event without too much expense or trouble on their part. So it's the date we selected is really more one of convenience than any um, more esoteric or astrological reason.
Okay. So, as you advanced through the line before becoming Grand Master, were there any special moments that jump out to you when you think back upon them?
Um, hmm. In North Carolina, again, and I've heard that some jurisdictions do something similar to this. The Grand Line officers do a retreat, and it's just the Grand Line officers. It's typically in mid-January, mid to late January. So shortly, within a month or so, a couple months of being installed, and it's a time that we get together to do a little bit of socializing. So everybody gets to connect, particularly with the new guy, and then we do a little bit of strategic work to lay out the plans for the coming year for the new grandmaster, as well as looking at things that might take multiple years to really put in place so that everyone's kind of on the same page on how we're going to move forward with that. And I think the thing that jumps out to me most is that's those are some of the most special memories I will have of those brethren, because of course, while we see each other all the time at various meetings and annual communication, things like that, those are very business-like. There's an agenda to them. These
Mhm.
retreats are, a little more laid back, late nights, maybe with an adult beverage or two, to be able to really open up and get to know each other in a very personal way. And there were, I don't want to go into too much detail on some of the stories, but those were some of the best times in my service to the fraternity, because for me personally, because of how well I got to know some of those guys. And that's the one downside when you serve as Grand Master, that retreat is your last retreat. We don't have anything after that, so it's a bit poignant, but also very special.
So it's a bit bittersweet that last year.
Yeah, yeah.
It sounds like from what you're describing, though, it creates a really intensive sense of continuity from leadership to leadership, so that there isn't like you probably were part of the planning program for what you're implementing in your Grandmaster's year, since you were the Grand Junior Steward, and so you've been part of that continuity. Is that kind of the process that happens,
Yeah,
generally
that's
speaking?
exact.
That
Yes.
Okay, because I
Yes.
know that there are many lodges that experience that. The line at every lodge, and I'm assuming the Grand Line as well, of different jurisdictions, where if there isn't that continuity, there's this like really big shakeup when a new person comes in with a brand new plan, and it's like everything that happened the last year gets tossed out, and you've got these new programs that may or may not be really well received. And it sounds like y'all have found a really great way to subvert that whole um, shake-up system that might happen.
I think so. I mean, so I will say this. I think in North Carolina, it works very well for us. And it works very well for us for a couple of reasons. One, I think every new junior grand steward is told, you're looking for the right guy to put at the bottom of the line. And part of being the right guy is someone who can work with the rest of the grand line. The other thing that helps it work is our past grandmasters. We do not have like an automatic, like some jurisdictions. If you're a past grandmaster, you're automatically on Masonic jurisprudence or the Code Commission or something like that. Our past grandmasters tend to kind of fade back, so we really leave it to the current grand line to help shape the future. I will say, the one thing that I learned that I just hadn't realized until becoming Grandmaster is, over the years, as we have implemented different strategic plans, I was very much a part of the working group to get those plans put in place. That is, I would literally be doing, spreadsheets and correspondence and things like that to make those plans happen. It wasn't until I became Grandmaster that I realized, well, that's because the grandmaster can't do that. You just would not have time, and I hadn't anticipated, not having time to continue to do some of the things that I know the brethren behind me have to work on, and I just have to keep the faith that just as in previous years, we continue to move in the same strategic direction. That those guys behind me will continue to move in the same strategic direction, because there does need to be that continuity. With that said, we do every grandmaster kind of has his own quote unquote program area of focus that he thinks is particularly important. But what we try to do is we try to separate what the grandmaster's general program is for his year from the more overarching strategic type of activities that need to span multiple years. We're very conscientious about that, I would say, or at least we try to be.
Well, and that leads us actually into our next question. As Grand Master, what has been your particular main focus?
So my main focus has been on bringing truth into balance with our more social and charitable aspects of the fraternity. So when I'm speaking to the brethren, I'm talking about esoteric aspects of the fraternity. I'm trying to shed light there. Uh, talk about Masonic philosophy and the need to have more education in the lodges. In fact, I call out in our code where the code basically says that. It doesn't say it in those exact words, but it does say that lodges are supposed to be doing philosophical type of work during their meetings, and that's been my main focus. My predecessor, Most Worshipful Brother Max Sigmund, he was very much a ritual guy, so it actually set up very well. He talked a lot about how the ritual works and what it does, and sort of the mechanics behind it. And then, my year now, I'm talking about some of more of the underlying, more esoteric aspects of the ritual. And the next guy behind me, he's got his plans, which he and I have talked about, and I think it'll make a nice follow up to what I've kind of been laying there. And so, one of the things I try to share with the guys is so many lodges today have become so focused on just trying to keep the lights on, they've forgotten about keeping the light. So, that's one of the things I'd really try to encourage them is, yes, you do have to be able to pay the light bill, but at the same time, you have to be able to share the Masonic light as well.
So that's
Otherwise, why keep the lights on?
right. No, and that's a great phrase, right? So focused on keeping the lights on, you forget to keep the light. Do you have a motto as Grandmaster? Would it be something similar to that?
Yeah, yeah. My motto, if you will, is tell your story and keep the light. And that kind of comes from the idea that there is power in storytelling. And I believe that by sharing our stories and how the craft has changed us personally, what we have derived or gotten from the craft, that helps inspire others to see what we see in the craft. And so there's kind of like you tell your story, you're sharing the light, et cetera, et cetera. So the two kind of go hand in.
All right. And kind of changing the subject a little bit, to understand a little bit more about the Grand Lodge of North Carolina, how many Masons and lodges do you have um, in your Grand Lodge?
We have approximately 35,000 members. That's if you count physical bodies, and then slightly more than that when you count actual uh, dues paying members, because, for example, I belong to 4 lodges.
Mhm.
We have 371 chartered lodges with 1 or 2 right now under dispensation. Over the last 20 or 15 years, over the last 15 years, we've chartered, I think, 12, 13 new lodges. We've moved towards more affinity lodge models. We have, I know some jurisdictions allow motorcycle groups,
Mhm.
motorcycle clubs. We do not allow clubs. So we have, I think, 5 different lodges that are made up of motorcycle enthusiasts. We have a lodge that's focused very much on education. We have 3 traditional observance lodges. So those that kind of feel that more special interest group are the ones that have popped up over the last several years.
Right. So speaking of special interest lodges, North Carolina actually can claim fame to the very first research lodge in the United States as well.
Yeah, the Nokolori. Yeah, the North Carolina Lodge of Research, number 666.
Right. So, and I had asked about that when I heard the number. I'm like, was that just the next number, or was that?
It was
Uh,
the next number.
okay.
Yeah, it's in North Carolina. We go strictly by the next number. You can't request a number. Actually, we're the next lodge that gets chartered will be number 774, and I understand a lot of people are kind of waiting to form a new lodge, and so they can potentially get 777 a lot.
Right. Maybe that should be your next research lodge.
It could be. It could be.
Yeah, and actually here in Texas, actually we do have. So you can receive special dispensation, like our Tranquility Lodge is actually lodge number 2000, even though we have, only a couple of hundred. I mean, actually we're into over 1,000. I think we're like 14, 1,500 in that numbering. But that one was given a particular number, I guess, to kind of indicate its special status.
Hmm. That's very
Yeah.
cool.
So I've heard that there's an educational program that you rolled out. Can you tell us more about that?
The middle chamber program is probably what you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. In North Carolina, we're very proud to have several education programs that focus on different areas. We have, in fact, this weekend was the first session of something called Wilkerson College, which is a 3 weekend session for deacons of lodges who are moving towards being master. And then we have the Davy Academy, which is sort of a one-day class on a variety of different topics throughout the year. But the middle chamber program is one that's currently in its fourth year and focuses completely on the esoteric aspects of our ritual. And the way we work it is at the beginning of the year, we will hold 4 different introductory sessions that take about 3 hours to allow brethren from across the state. We do it at 4 locations across the state to come and listen to a lecture called Allegory and Symbolism, and determine if it's something that they're interested in continuing. And if they are interested, we charge a small fee of just $150, and with that fee they get the Kirk McNulty's book, Steinmetz, the meaning of the hidden meaning of Masonry, Wilmshurst's The Meaning of Masonry, Chuck Dunning's Contemplative Masonry, Rob Hurd's The Initiatic Experience, and a personal journal. So they actually get quite a bit for the fee they pay. And that makes them eligible to continue the program, which then is spread over several months, where each session is following that is a full day session with one focused on the first degree. The next one focuses on the second degree, and the third one, of course, focuses on the third degree. And during those sessions, we explore some of the more esoteric concepts behind the purpose of those degrees, where, if you don't mind, I'll share with you a little bit. In the first degree, we're talking really about the idea that, the purpose of the first degree is to teach you that you have both a false self, your ego, and you have your true self, who you truly are. And what we're trying to do with the first degree is to get you initiated into the understanding that that difference exists, so that you can begin to be more your authentic self and act through the will of deity, and not just your more animalistic nature. The second degree, we understand, there's a psychical or emotional part of who we are as beings. And so while the first degree may indicate more about, who we are in our physical presence, the second degree is geared more towards our emotional and psychical or mental presence. And of course, the third degree focuses on the spiritual aspect of who we are as men. And so each of those full day sessions, we use videos, we use movies, we give homework. Of course, we have the books that people are asked to read. And then we walk through the ritual itself. And as we go through the ritual, we have instructors who provide, some insights from what they've gleaned, in ways to interpret some aspects of the ritual or the symbols that sort of align with that philosophy that we kind of aligned ourselves with. And last year, we actually added a new session called the Inner Chamber, and that was such a profound experience. We actually used Chuck Dunning came down and helped facilitate that session for us, and we actually physically did one of the exercises in his book. We had an empty lodge room with nothing but candles and incense.
Mhm.
And each member of that class would enter the lodge room, approach the altar by themselves with a question in mind, and then go to the worshipful master station, the senior and junior warden stations, and basically mentally go through that question with themselves in the hopes that some inspiration or answer would come to them. And I think, to a man, every guy came out just profoundly touched. I saw several people crying. Personally, when I went through, I came out and I was crying. It was very emotional, and wonderful experience, and one we're going to replicate as best we can for a second year in October.
Wow, it sounds like a fantastic experience.
Oh, it was, and this is a program that we are in North Carolina more than happy to share with other jurisdictions who may have an interest in trying to implement something like this for themselves. A group of us last year actually went to Illinois. We went to Chicago and did a weekend long, 3.5 or so day training with a group of their education committee and their ritualistic group so that they could get a sense of how we do the program here. And then we gave them our materials so that they could adjust it to how it needs to work based on their ritual and things like that.
So, have what kind of feedback have you received from the brothers that have attended the program so far?
It's overwhelmingly positive. When we first developed this program a little over 4 years ago, before we rolled it out, we thought we might have, there might be 10 or 12 guys across the state who would really be interested enough to, pay the fee and spend the time and all that. As busy as everybody is. And we had, I think, 25 people or so in our first class. And every year since then, the numbers have nearly doubled. Last I heard, we had, I think it was 80 people enrolled in this year's class. And the guys have gotten so much out of it because, again, going back to something we discussed earlier, so many lodges have a culture of focusing on the philanthropic and the more social aspects of the fraternity. The men that joined looking for the philosophical haven't really found what they were looking for in their lodge. And this has given those men an opportunity to sort of congregate together and know that they're not alone. And also the opportunity to take back some of these ideas to their own lodges to share with their brethren. As I've traveled through the state, it's amazing to me the guys that are first very interested in doing the chamber program, the number of guys who attend my meetings and who have attended who speak very positively about it and encouraging men, other members to go through it. And then how many 40, 50, 60 plus year members come up to me later and say, I wish we had this when I joined.
So that's amazing because honestly, when you hear of a program like this, you would think that there would be um, generational, that it would skew towards the younger generations. But that's amazing to hear that some of the older generations of Masons, that this is providing an outlet that they've been looking for this entire time.
It is. It is. It's one of those things where it's always been there. It's just again that membership bubble. It kind of got lost. There's this tsunami of all these new members, and the guys that knew the we call them the knowers, or sometimes the seekers, who had a real eye towards this esoteric. They just got overwhelmed, and they couldn't teach everybody. Not everybody was interested, and so it got buried. And again, what I think the membership bubble popping, this decline in membership that at least in North Carolina we've experienced for the last 40 years, has allowed us to shrink enough where those voices can be heard again. And as I talk to some of those older brethren, the sense I get was that's why they joined, but they didn't have anybody to talk to. And so they just kind of fell in line with, well, this is what the fraternity is, and I'm going to continue to do it and kind of study it on my own. But they were aching for it the whole time.
Mhm.
Well, it sounds like you're also discovering that there is a huge a huge need for that in the brotherhood, that there's more interest out there than I think that perhaps that leadership has led us to believe. Because if this is you're kind of describing exponential growth in this program here, it seems like that means that perhaps we shouldn't be so quick to poo-poo that idea of esotericism in the fraternity. We recently had an episode about esoteric issues like skulls and Freemasonry and the controversies surrounding it. And it just seems like that there's a giant sea change going on in our fraternity, at least from my perspective. I don't know what it looks like from your perspective, obviously, in such a large, 30,000 feet view. But is that the kind of the sense that you're getting, or is that are you just seeing this kind of like as an outlet for those people who've always been there, but it's not really a growing group?
I think it's both. I think it is certainly an outlet for the group that has always been there. I know, I mentioned I joined because I wanted to be a good father to my son. But there was the underlying spiritual, philosophical, esoteric aspect I could have joined any other social organization or civic organization and probably met really good guys who could serve as role models of fatherhood. But I was attracted to our craft because of the esoteric, because I sensed what was there, and I'm certain that there are a lot of men, a lot of members who were like me, who sensed that it was there and didn't quite find it, but can still tell it was there. At the same time, so many men today are craving that type of experience, that spiritual, philosophical experience, and I think one of the most interesting things that we have in our fraternity is, we do not allow discussions of politics or religion in our lodges. And as such, we can be the uniter for people of different ideas to come together and hopefully, as brothers, speak frankly about how we feel and what we think about different topics, in order to improve who we are as individuals. And so, if we can live up to that, live up to that mantle, I think I wouldn't say I'm doing this or I think that this is the means to grow the membership, but I think we will have far more passionate members who are willing to put in the time and effort to make sure our fraternity continues to live and be a strong, vital part of the communities. And so doing this, I think, does both. It allows those guys who came in looking for it an outlet, but it also opens it up to the men who are not currently members who are searching for that type of light.
Yeah,
That
and
sounds like a
actually,
profoundly great program, and I'm really excited to learn more about it, actually.
So we'd love to share it. We really would.
most worshipful, if you don't mind, as you've had an opportunity to grow within the Grand Lodge of North Carolina, and take on a role of leadership, what do you feel constitutes a good leader?
Uh, so I'm going to answer this with the context of a good Masonic leader, if that's all right. I think good leadership is a good leader is a good leader, regardless. But I think there are certain things that make certain traits or characteristics that make someone particularly a good Masonic leader. So there's the general just leadership capabilities, experience in having led people, being able to think strategically, someone who can actually put a plan to action, has experience having done that at some scale, whether that scale is, a department in your professional organization, career, what have you, or as a worshipful master in a lodge who takes a program, develops it over time, and then oversees that program there. I think what's a little bit unique Masonically is, we have a very interesting demographic in that many of our members, most of our members, at least in North Carolina, I suspect this is the same across every other jurisdiction in the U.S., are typically in their 60s or older, and then there's a bit of a gap, and then we have a new cadre of guys who are coming in who tend to be in their 20s and 30s, and to me, a good leader is someone who can speak to both demographics in a way that they are heard. And so when I was looking for someone to appoint as the junior grand steward, that's what I wanted. I wanted someone that I knew had the ability, the experience of leadership from their past, but also had really solid communication skills and the ability to talk to the different groups that make up our fraternity in a way that again, they're understood, they're heard, that people feel connected to. And because, frankly, as Grandmaster, that's the power I have right now. Anyone with this title, your real power is your ability to communicate in a way that the craft understands, to get them thinking in a certain way. And if you can do that, you can shape success in the, as we talked earlier about the strategic plans. You can start to shape those changes over time that will continue to allow our fraternity to exist in a strong and healthy way. I think along with that, it's important that any Masonic leader has a good grasp on the ritual. I think one of the most embarrassing things you could do as a grandmaster is not be able to open or close a lodge. I would hate to be at that title and not be able to do the most basic aspects of our ritual. And I think that frankly, at least in North Carolina, you have to have the time and means to be able to get out and do all that work. As I've indicated before, not everyone has the flexibility to go to all these meetings and communicate in these ways. And so there's a certain aspect of the leadership, if you will, that you have to be able to take the time to do that. And the time's not just to go to the meeting, but to be able to think about it and plan it, what you're going to talk about or what you're going to do before you even get there. And that can be a burden on some guys. So those are some of the characteristics that I looked for when I was before I made my appointment.
Well, and to your last point, we've had several grand officers from Texas that have been on, and the one common theme when we ask them about their lead up to running for office and assuming the office is that it is a monumental investment. And sure, it's a monetary investment, but more especially, it's an investment in time that you have to be able to dedicate your time to being able to do a good job in order to be
Hmm.
a good leader.
Yeah, which implies that there's a passion for it. And when passion drives that desire, I think you can have more success. If ego is driving it, then you have someone who's looking for a title. But when you have passion driving it, you have people who are actually committed to doing the work that needs to be done to create real success.
Exactly.
So maybe I'll add
Yep.
passion to the list of characteristics.
And brother Sean, I know that there are there'll be quite a few North Carolina Masons that will also listen to this episode. Uh, is there anything that you would like to announce or promote, any websites or programs or events that you have coming up? And maybe not just for North Carolina Masons, but for Masons in other jurisdictions too that may find it of interest.
Sure. The two that I would call everyone's attention to if they have the opportunity to make it, and I'm looking for the dates, would be the Masonicon, which unfortunately I will not be able to attend this year. That's on, looks like May 18th, or is that April? April 18th.
Okay.
And the esoteric, yes.
And I was going to make the
Was it?
distinction because we have our Texas Masonicon here. That's the original
Oh, yeah.
Masonicon that's in Attleboro, Massachusetts, right?
That's right. I'm sorry. I forgot about that. Yeah, we have so many Masonicons now, which I think is a great thing. To have all that. And
We
the
agree.
Esotericon, which is the Mid Atlantic Esotericon, which is on, looks like June 12th at Kina Shriners in I think it's Manassas, Virginia. I'm
Mhm.
not sure that they're sold out yet, but I went last year. I thought the program was fantastic. I'm looking forward to being there this year. Um, so, you know, any brother, I think, or anybody interested in Freemasonry, the Esotericon is open to people who are not Masons. And then, just for those interested in North Carolina Masonry, we have our pig jig coming up May 15th and 16th, and it's a barbecue contest. And I'm sorry, brethren, but barbecue is made with pork, and it has to be chopped or pulled. And because I'm
Those are
from
some
North
fighting
Carolina,
words.
Right.
hey, I know. Like I said, I spent several months in Grapevine. I've eaten enough brisket, and it was delicious. Don't get me wrong, but that's not barbecue. That's chopped beef. Anyway, because I'm because I'm from the eastern part of North Carolina, proper barbecue also is made has vinegar-based sauce and not mustard. That's an abomination to those guys in South Carolina. I'm sorry.
Well, you know what? We're going to have to invite you to the Texas Masonic Family Day, and we can fight it out there.
You know, here's the thing. I just love to eat, so it's
Yeah, maybe we can have a barbecue exchange program between our two jurisdictions.
no, that would be fun. That would be fun.
All right.
Yeah, I actually, I used to when I would fly in, I did work every week there, and I used to take small bottles of, you know, what was called Texas Pete, but it's a vinegar-based sauce, and I would take small bottles with me so I could have a little taste of home when I was eating the barbecue there in Texas.
An emergency ration kit.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, so we are actually coming up to the end of the show. And Evie, did you have any further questions that you wanted to bring up to Most Worshipful Bradshaw?
I have nothing else. He's been so generous. You've been so generous with your time, brother, and we can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your unbelievably busy schedule to spend a couple of hours with us chatting about Freemasonry and Freemasonry in your jurisdiction. It's been a real pleasure, sir.
Well, thank you, and I've appreciated this opportunity to speak and share a little bit about what we're doing here in North Carolina. And thank you for having me on the show. It's been a wonderful experience.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. So our closing quote of the week is this was actually someone that I'm not sure if Rick knew when he put this together, but there is a Masonic connection here. So the quote is, "Some persons are always ready to level those above them down to themselves, while they are never willing to level those below them up to their own position. But he that is under the influence of true humility will avoid both these extremes. On the one hand, he will be willing that all should rise just so far as their diligence and worth of character entitle them to, and on the other hand, he will be willing that his superiors should be known and acknowledged in their place, and have rendered to them all the honors that are their due." And that is from Jonathan Edwards, who was um, he was a reverend actually in, I believe, Connecticut. But the Masonic connection is that his youngest son, Pierpont Edwards, was the first Grand Master of Connecticut in 1789.
Well, look at that. I'm not even sure that Rit would know that. Actually, there's a lot of books out there regarding Jonathan Edwards' spiritual learnings. In fact, I've done some studying in my philosophical and religious education about some of his teachings. So this is something that I've heard a couple of times.
Wow. Yeah. Very profound. So, Evie, would you like to wrap it up with some of our contact information and information
Certainly.
about Masonicon?
Sure, absolutely. So if you like what you've heard and want to learn a little bit more about Fort Worth 148, you can find us all over the interwebs. Our website is www.fortworth148.org. You can find us on the Facebook at Fort Worth Lodge 148. If you'd like to send us some email telling us how much you liked this episode, you can reach us at info148@fortworth148.org. And for those of you out there who loved what we talked about today about esotericisms and Freemasonry and all that fun stuff, we are hosting the second annual Texas Masonicon, and you can find your tickets at texasmasonicon.com. That's texasmasonicon.com. We still have tickets available. We also have the Texas Masonicon Festive Board, which is happening the Friday night before the Masonicon starts. We still have a few tickets remaining. They're going to sell out pretty quickly. I think we've got just a handful left. But if you want to come and visit with us, we have the aforementioned brother Chuck Dunning, who is going to be the speaker at our festive board. And so if you want to learn a little bit more about esotericism and just be part of a great activity, come visit us at Texas Masonicon and join in on the festive board.
Yeah, and actually, it's the third annual Texas Masonicon. So we are.
I am sorry,
grateful.
I misspoke there.
No, we're grateful to be able to do this for a third year and hopefully to be able to continue. Each year it seems to be met with more excitement on our part as we plan it, and we hope that it's met with excitement from those who attend as well. All right, and so with that, we'll go ahead and sign off. And this is Billy Hamilton signing off.
This is Evie Kirkendall signing off.
And this is Shaun Bradshaw signing off.